Slim. Nowadays, frameworks like Cake PHP, Symfony, CodeIgniter, and Zeb Framework are widely used for PHP application development. Each one offers unique features to streamline and simplify application development. It comes with lot of stuff that supports the development and related tasks. But there are some issues. Often a full-fledged framework is overkill and it's waste of both time and money. Think about prototyping and creating a web application with CRUD front-end, or deploying a basic REST API for the same. You can do all these tasks with the traditional framework. But the time and effort, and hence money, involved in learning and using it often outweigh the benefits. So here is the solution. PHP Slim Framework. Slim is a micro-framework which enables rapid web application development and prototyping, without the performance overhead and learning curve of full-fledged frameworks. We will use Slim for development of web applications and APIs. Slim comes with a simplified URL router, page template support, flash messages and logging mechanism, secure encrypted cookies, middleware for more and more security. Extremely easy to understand and use. It comes with great documentation and an enthusiastic developer community. Service-oriented architecture. So using the Slim framework we can develop to the SOA-oriented web application. We can build web services using Slim framework. It facilitates the development of RESTful-based web services, which can be consumed by the thin client or by mobile application. Also, these web services can be exposed to outside so that it can be consumed by the clients as well. Let's start the REST development. Let's understand REST. Representational state transfer. REST differs from SOAP in that it is based on resources and actions, rather than on methods and data types. A resource is simply a URL referencing the object or entity on which you want to perform the actions. For example, /users or /employees. And an action is one of the 4 HTTP verbs. Get, retrieve users or employees. Post, create a user or an employee. Put, update a user or an employee. Delete, remove the user or an employee. Let's consider a HRMS system, where you can add an employee and update his or her details, or delete employee, or view the list or individual details. Under the REST approach, you expose a URL endpoint with HTTP post packet to /employees URL to create a new employee, or send a HTTP GET request to /employees URL to retrieve a list of available employees. This approach is much easier to understand, as it maps existing HTTP verbs to CRUD operations. The typical REST conventions for URL requests are: GET request with URL/items means retrieve a list of items. GET request with URL/items/123 means retrieve item with identifier 123. Post request with URL/items means create a new item with providing data and post payload. Put request with URL/items/123 means update item with identifier 123. Delete request with URL/items/123 means remove item with 123. Slim URL router helps developers to map resource URIs to callback functions for specific HTTP request methods, such as get, post, put, and delete to the respective callback function to retrieve, create, update and delete items. Defining a new REST API is simple as defining these callback methods or functions, and filling them with appropriate code. Like if get request with URL/items means the callback function contains the code to select all employees from database and return them to client in JSON format. That's all. Now let's create the folder structure for the Slim project. If you want to use any dependency management tools like Composer, you can create a folder, give proper name to the folder and then create a file with the name composer.json. Add the lines to that file as shown here. and then run the command php composer.var install. This will download the dependencies from the internet and add it to the path inside your project. To load Slim, add this line to your application index.php file. $?PHP require vendor/autoload.php ? Greater than semicolon. Here is the folder structure. This is done more modular. Inside the project folder, we have created a folder with name API. Inside the API folder, add Slim and RedBean PHP frameworks. We can also add these frameworks manually. Download the code from the GitHub. Extract the folders and copy-paste them to API folder. As shown here, the framework contains the files and directories needed for that framework. Now here we are making a connection to the database using RedBean PHP ORM. 1. Include the rb.php. 2. Set up DB by providing host URL, database name, username and password. 3. This will establish a database connection to MySQL. 4. R:\freeze. Setting this true will not modify the database schema dynamically. So, as we don't want to change the schema, we will keep this .freeze as true. Now let's create an index.php file for the starting the API development. Here, we have 1. Include Slim framework in index file. 2. Include database connection file dbconnect.php to access the database. 3. Initiate Slim app. This is the code where the Slim app is getting instantiated. 4. $app greater than run the app. This code will run the PHP Slim app. Now let's create the controller files which will include the code as per the domain or entities in the project. We have added the Slim and RedBean PHP framework. We have added the Slim framework to the index file. We have also connected to database and added it to index file. Now we will create the folder with name controller and add the respective domain controller to this folder. We have added project controller to create, retrieve, update and delete project. Also notifications, test cases, test methods, test steps and so on. Similarly, we have added login controller to allow user login. Now let's see how to handle the request. Slim defines router callbacks for HTTP methods like get, post and so on. So the syntax is like $app dash greater than method name / comma middle name function, use $app. So here in the first example, when URL ends with /items have method name matching with HTTP methods such as get, post, put, delete, then the body of the function will get executed. $app dash greater than method name / /ID comma middle name function $id use $app. While here in the second example, when URL ends with /items /ID have method name matching with HTTP methods such as get, post, put, delete, then the body of the function will get executed and it will use the ID to retrieve the data from the database. Here ID will call this path variable. Let's see how to retrieve the items data by using the HTTP GET request with URL /items. Here item can be anything like books, files, employees, projects, students, etc. So here in the first example, when URL ends with /items with the HTTP GET method, then the callback code inside the function will get executed. In this code we will fetch all the items from the database, convert them into JSON format and return them. While here in the second example, when URL ends with /items /ID with HTTP method get, the callback function code will retrieve the item with the given ID and convert it to JSON format and return. The typical REST API supports two types of GET requests. The first for a list of resources, get /items, and the second for a specific resource, get /projects /123. Now let's see how to write the actual code. 1. App error get. This means this will get invoked if the HTTP method is get. 2. But then it should match with URL /projects /4/10. 3. Authenticate employee is the middleware used to make this REST API secure and allow authorization. 4. Then the callback function which will execute and use the path variable's page and limit. 5. Then the object of response DTO is created. 6. Then inside the try block using red bean PHP a SQL query is executed and it will get all projects which will match the query criteria. 7. If projects found and those are encoded to JSON string format and will return by setting content type as application/JSON. 8. If projects not found and resource not found exception is thrown and it is handled by sending success as false. Let's see the response how it looks in JSON format. Here URL ends with projects, plus the limit for the SQL to do the pagination. And the call is the HTTP GET call. Here you can see the projects returned in JSON format. The projects array is returned here. The project array contains 3 projects. And each project contains ID of the project, name and description of the project. Also owner ID of the project, that is user who have created that project. The token is added to the URL in order to prevent the data to be cached. As token keeps on changing, the response will not be cached. Let's see how to create the item by using the HTTP post request with URL/items. Here item can be anything like book, file, employee, project, student, etc. So here in the example when URL ends with /items with the HTTP post method, then the callback code inside the function will get executed. In this code we will create an item in database by using data send in the post payload. Post request creates a new resource. The requested body contains all the necessary inputs. The callback function needs to decode the request body, convert it into a red bean object, and save it to the database, then return a JSON encoded representation of the newly created resource, that is the JSON string. Or can return the 201 HTTP status code to indicate that the resource is created. Now let's see how to write the actual code. 1. _post. This means this will get invoked if the HTTP method is post. 2. But then it should match with URL/projects. 3. Authenticate employee is the middleware used to make this REST API secure and allow authorization. 4. Then the callback function which will execute. 5. Then the object of response DTO is created. 6. Then inside the try block request body is decoded from JSON string to PHP object. 7. Then using red bean PHP a new project row is created which will return the ID of the row. This is done in dispense. 8. Now the data sent in the request body is validated. 9. If it's valid, assigned to the object created using dispense and then stored to database. 10. If something goes wrong while storing, the exception is thrown, which will handle then catch clause and return success as false. Let's see how to delete the item by using the HTTP delete request with URL/item/identifier. Here item can be anything like book, file, employee, project, student, etc. So here in the example when URL ends with /item/id with the HTTP delete method, then the callback code inside the function will get executed. In this code we will delete an item in database by using ID send in the path variable. The callback function needs to get the path variable ID. Find the item with the ID in the database. If the item found, then delete the item from the database, then it can return a custom object, or delete the object in JSON format, or HTTP status 204 that is no response body. Now let's see how to write the actual code. 1. _delete. This means this will get invoked if the HTTP method is delete. 2. But then it should match with URL/project/ID. 3. Authenticate employee is the middleware used to make this REST API secure and allow authorization. 4. Then the callback function which will execute. 5. Then the object of response DTO is created. 6. then inside the try block if multiple ID are send the path variable and then explode that. 7. Then in the for loop using red bean PHP find the item if exist. 8. If item exists deleted from database. 9. If item not exist throw resource not found exception. 10. Here we can return custom JSON response or 204 HTTP status code. 11. If something goes wrong while storing the exception is thrown, which will handle and catch clause and return success as false. Let's see how to update the item by using the HTTP put request with URL/item/identifier. Here item can be anything like book, file, employee, project, student, etc. So here in the example when URL ends with /item/id with the HTTP put method and the callback code inside the function will get executed. In this code we will update an item in database by using id send in the path variable. The callback function needs to get the path variable id. Find the item with the id in the database. If the item found then retrieve it from the database. Change the parameter of the object by using the data in the request body. Then return the updated object in the JSON string format. Now let's see how to write the actual code. 1. _put. This means this will get invoked if the HTTP method is put. 2. But then it should match with URL/project/ID. 3. Authenticate employee is the middleware used to make this REST API secure and allow authorization. 4. Then the callback function which will execute. 5. Then the object of response DTO is created. 6. Then inside the try block the request body is taken. 7. Using the path variable the project is searched in the database. 8. If item exists then it is retrieved from the database and its parameters those supposed to update are changed. 9. Then the project object stored back to the database. 10. If project not exists throw resource not found exception. 11. Here we can return custom JSON response or 204 HTTP status code. 12. Or the updated project object in JSON format. 13. If something goes wrong while storing the exception is thrown, which will handle and catch clause and return success as false. This is how the CRUD operations are handled in the different callbacks. Those callbacks are mapped using different methods and URL. Now let's see how to use the middleware. Middleware is one or more custom functions that are invoked before the callback function for the corresponding route. Middleware makes it possible to perform custom processing on a request. It can manipulate the request, the response, it can halt the processing altogether, or do completely unrelated stuff, like logging. With middleware, it's possible to ensure that the API requests are properly authenticated by passing the request through a custom authentication method before allowing them to be processed. Is resource enhanced that operation allowed that user role? Let's see how we have used the authenticate employee or employer middleware in the code. 1. Retrieve an instance of the Slim app. 2. Get encrypted cookies from the request. 3. Get the headers from the request. 4. Then it checks if header token with any name given. Here it is XXSRF token in present in the header or not. 5. And if present then it is compared with the values in the session. When user log in these values and stored in session and sent to client as well. 6. Every request client will send these values to server and server will cross-check it. 7. If value mismatched then application will halt and send 401 HTTP status code, which means unauthorized access. That's all. By using simple PHP code, Slim and Red Bean PHP framework you can develop the RESTful API, which will talk with client using JSON data. You can create, delete and retrieve data. You can use middleware to make the API secure and use it as authentication and authorization.